Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining. A brief introduction. My name is Amy Jensen, and to my right, your left, is Alison Holland. Alison and I have about 13 years collectively in the recruitment industry with healthcare leadership and work for a company called the Healthcare Initiative, who's been in business for over 40 years, doing both interim and permanent executive level recruitment. In the last 5 years, we have seen an uptick, already doing tremendous amount of work in permanent, but we've seen an uptick in a call for interim leadership from our client hospitals. And we've come to believe this is really due to the value that a good interim can bring to a hospital.
So our plan for today is to introduce you to interim leadership and discuss interim leadership more in depth and how to become an interim leader. I know a lot of you have worked with interim leaders throughout your career and even probably in your current facility right now. And we're going to touch on a lot of information. I know some of you may have to jump off early, and that's okay. Amy and I are going to share, I know you have the emails from Rachel, so we've shared our information, so please reach out to us so we can even talk with you and discuss something one-on-one. We'll get a calendar invite to you for that. But if you do have questions throughout, we're going to answer those at the end. So you'll notice the chat box. Please please check Amy Host. That way those questions will come directly to Amy and I, but we won't be getting to those till the end of the webinar.
Fantastic. If you could stay with us for just a minute, we want to make sure that everyone else has been able to have a chance to log in successfully. And wanted to also note that so you don't have to watch our faces through this entire webinar, we're going to be moving to the screens here in just one moment. Thanks again for joining. Fantastic. Let's go ahead and get started with first defining what an interim leader is. So an interim leader is an expert in a service line or multiple service lines who is brought into an organization to solve urgent leadership needs. Typically, the goal is to improve or hardwire changes in a short period of time, and the assignments usually last from 4 to 6 months and can be extended month to month.
You might ask, why do hospitals choose to hire interim leaders? Here are 3 reasons. There's availability, immediate results, and experience. I'm going to start with availability first. Interim leaders are available immediately, whereas it may take up to 4 months to hire a permanent leader. Bringing on an interim leader will ease the transition process and will keep things running smoothly. Then we have immediate results. An interim leader can assess the needs and start delivering results within 5 days, identifying those quick wins and rapidly build relationships with all the physicians, patients, and staff. Experience. Interim managers, director offer a depth of experience and a capability to transition swiftly into new positions and new organizations. Additionally, interim leaders can provide fresh perspective and new ideas to push the teams forward.
Alison talked about why the demand for interim is there. Now let's talk about the impact an interim leader has. What value can an interim leader bring to a hospital? First of all, it could be a chance to restructure or reorganize. We have a live example that is going on right now at a community-based hospital that is part of a major healthcare system. We placed a CNO at this hospital about 1.5 years ago, and once this CNO had been in place for 3 months, they assessed that there were 2 large service lines that needed restructuring. We received a call from this CNO for interims in both areas. One was there for 6 months, is making major headway in restructuring the area, and has now taken the role on a permanent basis. The other is 6 months in and is doing such great work. We'll be there another 6 months, and by that point in time, our hope is that things will be hardwired. Another value that an interim brings is coverage. keep the ship from sinking. Sometimes it's just that. The hiring manager knows if they've got a good interim in, they've got it covered. Another reason, a value would be stabilization. Oftentimes there's been an exorbitant amount of change and turnover, and they need a stabilizing force that can come in and build immediate trust. We've also got the chance, a value that bringing in an interim limits the chance for a costly mishire. We need to realize the average cost of onboarding a new leader in an organization today is approximately $125,000, which means the hospital needs seriously to take their time when hiring this permanent leader. Another value point would be a good interim can come in and assess departmental needs. There are times when a new set of eyes are needed to do a full assessment of a department. And finally, no surprise to you, change management. About 65% of the time, serious, immediate changes need to be made within the department, and they need an expert to come in and begin making changes.
So I'm going to touch on specific situation examples that call for interim leaders. Now, these are depending on the service line and the needs of the facility. Different situations include repeated low productivity issues due to low engagement and poor process, mentoring staff, the need for educating and mentoring up staff members, extended leave, pregnancy, extended PTO, family emergencies. And I know you're all familiar with this one. Those troops are getting restless because finding the permanent solution has taken so long. Things like J-code preparedness or a magnet journey. These are specific expertise areas that are needed to help keep them on track. Sometimes it's growth within the department, remodeling, building, adding new physicians, adding new service lines, services. And finally, cost savings. Oftentimes, due to time constraints or lack of knowledge, large sums of money are being wasted or not captured. A little tweaking may be needed to save hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Let's talk a minute about the type of background an interim leader needs to typically have. Hospitals generally prefer interim nursing leaders to have a BSN, most often required, an MSN, some kind of master's degree, depending on leadership level you are hired for, is usually preferred, a current RN license in the state you will be working, 5 to 7 years of clinical and progressive leadership experience in the service line you specialize in, and certifications such as BLS, ACLS, PALS, etc.
So let's talk about you. What would be the benefits for you, the interim? Well, the first one is travel. Interim assignments can offer you the opportunity to see different areas of the country you have always wanted to see, and now you can. You may even decide you want to remain in the area where you're having the interim assignment. This interim position affords you the opportunity to try it out before making that permanent decision. There's a choice in assignment, and this is up to you. We encourage taking assignments where you do what you love to do. For example, if you have been away from the clinical side of care for too long and want to be out of clinical side, then say no to those positions that include being clinical. Then there is flexibility. It's your decision when you want to work versus the 24/7, 365 you're probably doing already. As an interim, you can have time for the home projects and the trips you have wanted to schedule but haven't had the time before. It's a chance for that work-life balance. Finally, a benefit of interim is it gives you the permission to transition. Interim work gives you a planned way to depart from the current normal, a chance to sit back and figure out what you still love about nursing management and decide what you really want to do, and even at times a chance to heal up from difficult jobs.
So we started to talk a little bit about some of the advantages to an interim leader. Let's talk about a few more of these perks that come along with an interim. Interim leaders are offered a combination of incentives in the compensation package for the duration of the interim assignment. The usual items include a competitive salary. Depending on the service line and area of the country, typically the compensation is pretty robust. Housing. You are always provided housing, typically a furnished apartment or extended stay that you will feel comfortable in. But beware of this. This does not mean always a 5-star, folks. We actually had one leader staying on a houseboat, and she loved it. Next would be a rental car if needed. This, again, is pretty straightforward unless you are in Alaska, where you might need an airplane or a boat. Or another example might mean taking on an assignment that is 2 to 3 hours away from your home. You may choose to drive your own car and be reimbursed for gas or mileage. And then trips home. Depending on the situation, we usually push for every 3 to 4 weeks as our standard, especially if you live a long way from the assignment. This allows you to have a longer weekend at home and to provide the client with a more consistent presence. And finally, another perk would be healthcare benefits. Depending on your situation, you may or may not need healthcare benefits. However, we do recognize this need and will work with you on this by building the cost into your hourly wage.
So are you ready to jump ship? Well, we got a little bit of homework that's required first. We've been doing this long enough to know that interim candidates need to make sure this path logistically makes sense. Is it the right time? Do your family responsibilities allow for you to be away? Financially, have you met with your financial advisor to see if this is feasible? This is a good chance to sit with a professional to figure out how much money you will need monthly and annually. You may be closer than you think. You've been so busy running, you haven't had the time to look out for yourself. Now, if you determine it's the right time, we're going to talk about your resume. There are 2 major pieces to a resume that need to be defined, and these are a clear objective and quantifiable results. I'm going to start with clear objective first. The meaning we have for clear objective, there needs to be a clear objective at the top of your resume. This speaks to who you are, what you have done, and what you are known for is what you deliver. Then we have quantifiable results. These are in the body of your resume, and they make sure to include these quantifiable achievements with metrics that back it up. Please remember, this is real important. Your resume becomes your working document for editing and adding as you take on new interim assignments. Always keep it up to date. And then as an add-on, we've developed an achievement spotlight. This is a tool to help you identify your top 5 to 7 strengths and accomplishments and detail them on what we call an achievement spotlight. This is a great way to advertise you and what you bring to the potential client. We use your achievement spotlight and resume when presenting you for an interim assignment. If you want to see an example of an achievement spotlight, please visit our website and then click on Amy's bio page for further information.
So before you say yes, let's make sure you're prepared. Are you ready to go if offered an assignment? Interim assignments usually start very quickly, in a matter of weeks from being chosen as the interim leader. This means you need to be ready to begin the interim assignment rather quickly. We've had interims interview for a position on a Wednesday and start work the following Monday. On the flip side, we have made the interim placement. It might be 6 weeks before the assignment starts. Why might that be? We've come up with 2 reasons. Number 1, you may need to give proper notice to your current hospital. And again, you need to get through what the hospital requires for you to come on. Another reason might be you have to get a license in that new state, which could take 4 to 6 weeks. Let's talk a little bit more about this RN license piece. No surprise to you, you know you need to have a nursing license for every state you practice in. If you know now what states you would like to work in, potentially as an interim, you should perhaps start looking at that process for licensure in that state now. Most states take 4 to 6 weeks. However, California and New York can take quite a bit longer. Of course, there's always the caveat, the compact license. Unfortunately, Oregon, Washington, and California are not compact states. However, if you are living in a compact state and have a current license there, you can, yes you can, practice in any other compact state with that license. Again, more information on this is posted on our website under Amy's bio page. So after the yes, onboarding starts. All interim assignments, like all permanent assignments and onboarding, have detailed background checks, drug screens, immunization requirements, certifications, and specific onboarding training depending on the hospital. So let's be sure to stay current with your immunizations and any certifications that you have now and need for your current service line. Also keep in mind, there may be some out-of-pocket costs associated with the RN license fees and any immunizations needed for onboarding that are not current or a special requirement for the assignment.
So let's dream together. We are happy to discuss this with you guys one-on-one. When we connect, we can brainstorm. What about interim work might be good for you? And what types of positions would you get excited about? We can talk about what makes sense for your desired lifestyle. We can discuss your resume and your achievement spotlight when you call. We can determine, is this a good time to make the jump to interim today? And if not, then when?
Great, Allison. It looks like we have some questions to answer. We might give you another minute or two to go ahead and put your question in if you have them before the session ends. But overall, for those of you who need to leave, thank you again for joining us today. Also, please check out our website. We have a lot of links that will help you through this process. So Allison, let's go ahead and head on over to questions.
That sounds perfect. Okay, well, at the questions, let's look. I have one here that says, how often do interim leaders convert to perm?
How often do interim leaders convert to perm? That is a really good question. And that's intuitive of you to think that way. I would say in our practice, and we have a lot of interims out during the year, I would say 60 to 70% of the time, the interim leaders will convert to perm.
Yes, and we've just recently had 2 in the last 2 months that converted to perm.
Right.
So.
Not that you have to. You're only signing up for what you're signing up for. But yes, we have seen that happen. And here's why. Sometimes, like Allison mentioned earlier on, you get there, everyone's had a chance to check you out, you've had a chance to check them out. It can just be a magical fit. So, you know, going in, you might think, oh, I don't know that I would ever want to go into perm because that's what I wanted to get away from. But it happens, the magic can happen, and you might, in the end, be interested in staying permanently.
Or you might fall in love with the area, too. That has happened also. On the Achievement Spotlight, how far do you go back in your work experience for quantifiable results? That's a good question.
That is a good question. I would say at least the last 2 positions, but we also on your resume want to see everything that you've done, even if it's something, you know, you were a surgical tech for a few years before you got your nursing degree, simply for the progression of leadership, progression of your career. But those last 2 positions strongly suggest that for quantifiable results. For example, 2 positions ago, you might have been really helpful with epic.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the go live was epic. And that then would show us a skill set that you could bring to this interim position. So be sure, first of all, that those achievements are on your resume. And yes, advice would be to go back 2 or 3. Mm-hmm.
Okay, another question. Does the hospital ever pay for the RN license that is required for the state the interim position is located?
Another good question.
Another good question. It has happened. Usually they do not, because you are able to use this interim license with other facilities in the area. But it is always worth us talking to the hiring authority and asking if that is something that is holding you back, especially if you are the one that they want for this interim assignment. But usually they do not, because you do have that option to use this nursing license at other times.
And I don't want to further complicate things, but if that is an issue,
correct,
what we sometimes do is we add that into your hourly rate. So for example, if that license is $285, we will reduce it to the ridiculous. So we'll take $285 and divide that by 2080 to know how much an hour you're going to, that amounts to. And then we will add that onto your hourly rate as we negotiate your salary.
We're getting some great questions in here. Do hospitals offer benefits to interim leaders?
It depends.
It depends. We have had it where after 3 months, I think they offered the interim benefits. But usually you go on, there's a couple of ways of doing it, and I know we can get in depth with this when you reach out to us personally, we can talk further, but usually you're a non-benefited employee.
Correct. Again, that can be affected. We might have answered that before in adding a dollar or so to your interim rate that can cover for some of those benefits.
Another question is, this is an LLC in my understanding. Can you fill me in on what should go into obtaining this, etc., and what it looks like state to state? Thank you.
Good question. Actually, this is not an LLC in most situations. The way we have 2 choices of bringing you on for an interim, and like Alison said, we can talk one-on-one offline about it, but basically one way is going on to the hospital payroll as a non-benefited employee. The other way is going through our third party called IES. In both of those situations, you do not need to have your LLC. Your taxes are taken out either by the hospital, if we put you on that way, or through IES. So an LLC would require more that you would go on as a 1099. And what we are experiencing is the government is becoming much more particular these days in having to prove exactly what you are doing with the LLC. So we would honestly advise you to stay away from that, just kind of a blanket statement there, but again, happy to talk one-off with you about that.
Let me go up here. Sorry if it takes me a second, I have to scroll back up. How often do interim positions in quality come up?
More frequently.
Yeah.
More frequently, because those of you in quality understand it's all connected to finances in the end, right? And so quality measures and HCAP scores and all of that will affect the bottom line. And I think hospitals that are needing to be, you know, every hospital is having to be very conscious of their reimbursements now more than ever. So the chance of having someone to come in and really work on raising those quality scores, we're getting more calls for quality.
So a question, another firm has a plethora of permanent placements available. What can I expect in terms of consistency of placement for interim positions or IES or through IES? Well, I'll start this question or this answer. We have at least 9 account executives that cover regions across the whole United States. So we keep people very busy. It just depends on where your nurse license is. Once you decide, or if you decide that you want to get into interim, we have a profile page that we have on you, and we market interim, that you're open to the country. We can also do this in the beginning so you can kind of see how the interim assignments are starting to come in and the emails that you will receive for these assignments.
I'll add on to that.
Mm-hmm.
There are definitely other companies, as mentioned in the question, that do interim leadership. The one strong suggestion I would make is never work with a company that says you have to only work with them.
Right.
Because that is going to limit, really, your choices. We may have positions for you 6 months out of the 12 months of the year, and you might be, really in need of another assignment.
Mm-hmm.
And so there are other companies certainly that you can get on with. Again, so many of our assignments, though, start as a 3 or 4 months and they extend. I don't know that we mentioned, I guess we did mention that they extend, but don't think that it's just you need a 3-month assignment and then another 3 months and another 3 months, because our experience is, again, due to the value that a good interim brings, and we work with you as a candidate before you get into an interim leadership experience, we want you to be able to deliver what you say you can deliver. And we want them to hire the person that can deliver what they really need. So that's why, in our experience, there are a lot of extensions or converting to permanent that take place.
We want you to succeed. So
Absolutely.
That's what we are here for. We're here to help you and work with you. Another question, I'm in a unique position as I live in the Bay Area. I'm a new grad here, and pay is about $55 plus an hour. Seasoned RNs earn 70 to 90 plus per hour. Will an interim position pay compatible wages for someone like me who lives in the highest paying region?
Good question. I would like to speak with you offline a little bit about that, because it depends on if you are an RN or if you are a leader, a manager or a director.
Correct.
I don't know, we don't place a lot of interim staff people. What we do a majority of is placing leadership people. And you are, as we mentioned in the webinar, you are paid more for an interim position. And so we kind of negotiate with you. We find out from the hospital what they're willing to pay an interim leader. When we talk with you, we find out what you're going to need. And again, we try to work in that healthcare, and we try to work in, several different things, as we mentioned. Hopefully it's going to be enough to make what you are, at least what you're making now, or more. But it's true, coming from the San Francisco Bay Area, a position in Montana may not pay as much. But again, think about your quality of life. And I guess from there, we'll talk offline about that.
I have an MHA. I'm not a nurse. Do you have non-nursing opportunities?
Probably something to talk offline about. It really depends on what area you are in. For example, you could be in perioperative services and be a business director, which does not require a nurse.
Correct.
You could be in case management, and that might not require a nurse.
Or cardio.
We have
yeah. Cardiovascular
services might be the same situation. So again, we'd want to talk with you offline. Certainly send us an email, even sending us your resume for us to take a good look at that, and we could better answer that. But short answer would be yes, there are opportunities.
Where do you find interim jobs statewide in most demand? That's a great question.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Amy Jensen and I work in the Pacific Northwest, Northern California, the Mountain States. So our greatest area right now, I would say, is Idaho, Northern California, Oregon, Washington. It's most of the states that we are in. But with the other United States, like I said, we have account executives all throughout the United States. So I'm not sure exactly where a lot of their positions are.
Yeah. There are, and it also depends on, there's so many different shapes and sizes of hospitals. We work with a couple of very large healthcare systems, so we find quite a few opportunities within those systems for interim leadership. We get a lot of calls from them. Again, could be their smallest hospitals, could be their largest hospitals. So that's kind of a hard blanket answer, but again, willing to speak with you more about that.
Do you recommend obtaining nursing license in any particular states to get started? Maybe in states where more interim work may be
Maybe there,
Yeah.
maybe present.
Maybe present.
Good question. If you know, for example, your family's back in the Midwest and you're feeling a need to kind of connect with them, and that would be an area that you would you just know you'd love to go to.
Right.
I would check into, you know, what it requires to get the state license there, what the fee would be, and if it's a state you really know you want to go, you can go ahead and start the process. One example, as we mentioned earlier, would be California. California takes a long time to get through, to get your license. So if you know California is a place you've always dreamt of going, first of all, know that you need to have a lot of union experience, usually moving to California. But there are a lot of interim opportunities in California. It takes a long time to get your license. So short suggestion would be, yes, go ahead and get started on that.
Well, and it was funny this morning, I heard a candidate reach out to Amy, and he has 2 of his children going to college in Washington State. And he was reaching out to Amy because he wants to now do interim work in Washington State.
Yeah.
So he's asking for our assistance there. So there's many different ways of areas and why you want to go to those areas.
So of the states, there are 27, 28 states that are compact license states.
Mm-hmm.
If you live, like we mentioned earlier, in Oregon, Washington, California, those are not compact states. So the compact license, again, if you live in a state and have a license in that state that is a compact state, such as Montana, Utah, Wyoming, and Idaho,
right?
Then you could, if that's where you're living now and you have a license there, you could be practicing in all of those other states. Yeah.
Well, that is one of our last questions, I believe. And if I missed anyone's question, I apologize.
Actually, Alison, I see one more.
Oh.
I don't even have my glasses on, so let me catch this. Can your spouse travel with you to your interim assignment? Great question. Again, we see no reason why that wouldn't happen. Sometimes, again, depends on your situation as a nurse, as a leader. Hopefully, if you're getting into interim leadership, you are at a point where you've got that type of opportunity, and that your spouse or partner could either work virtually or might be retired. So absolutely, most often is provided a 1-bedroom.
Right.
So that's most likely what you would end up with for living conditions. So yeah, it's a neat opportunity for the spouse to travel with.
So now I hope I didn't miss anybody else's questions, but if I did, please reach out to us. We would, oh, I do, here's one more that just popped in. Are you stipend for your weekend homes, or do you have to, are you stipend for your weekend homes, or do you have support systems in place?
I'm not positive what that is asking, actually. Are you stipend for your weekend home? You're paid travel.
Right.
Your travel is paid for. As far as, are you asking if there would be per diem?
Meaning, do you have to arrange travel?
Oh,
no.
Okay. Total different thought. It really kind of depends. Some hospitals want you to arrange the travel and then submit the invoice to them for reimbursement.
Right.
Some hospitals and systems prefer that you go through their travel department because they feel like they've got maybe better rates. So either way. Mm-hmm. Any other questions?
Yeah, please let us know. Oh, thank you guys too. So I guess this webinar is a wrap. If I did miss anybody's questions, please reach out to Amy or myself. Mm-hmm. We would, again, love to chat with you guys one-on-one, just to talk further, answer any other questions. And also, if you have any friends or any colleagues that wanted to get on the webinar and actually missed the webinar, we are taping this. So it will be on our website. And we will share all of our contact information in just a second. I'll go back to that page for you, too.
Excellent. Last of all, in the next 24 hours or so, you will be receiving an email from our partner, Rachel. You've been hearing from Rachel. She is our triad, so important partner. This will give you an opportunity to ask any further questions, to express an interest in starting your own interim journey, and to provide additional feedback. We strongly wish that you would take just a few minutes to fill that out, because we anticipate having future webinars, and your input is very, very important. Another comment I wanted to make before we logged off is, if you feel like your own hospital could benefit from interim leaders coming in and doing some of the things that we mentioned in our webinar, the email that Rachel sends you will also have a spot in there that you can say, hey, you know, you may want to reach out to us and provide some contact information. So finally, the Healthcare Initiative is really committed to bringing strong nursing leadership to hospitals, both on an interim and a permanent basis. We welcome the opportunity to work with all of you, showcasing THI and what we feel and we know we do best. Thank you again, and have a great day.